Every week, hundreds of millions of people are signing into ChatGPT and Claude. Thanks to two new studies, we actually are now understanding what they're using those tools for. Welcome back to the AI Daily Brief. Today, we are moving beyond the anecdotal to actually understand how people are using LLMs. Both Anthropic and OpenAI recently put out reports that help give us a picture. Now, Anthropic's is their regularly updated economic index report, comes out every few months and is tracking the way not only that AI is being used, but what its potential impacts on the economy might be. But the OpenAI report is something altogether different. This is a big, distinct study that was conducted by OpenAI's economic research team in collaboration with the National Bureau of Economic Research and Harvard economist David Deming. It sampled 1.5 million conversations in a privacy-preserving manner to produce what OpenAI is calling the most comprehensive study of actual consumer use of AI ever released. Now, one thing to note, which distinguishes this from the enterprise study, is that this is just consumer AI use. No enterprise data was gathered. Yet at the same time, it does still look at economic and work-related use cases that appear in that broader pattern of consumer usage. So what did OpenAI learn? Let's start with the high level. One of the things that stands out to me as I dug into this is just how absurd the growth pattern of ChatGPT has been. This little line here, that shows that it took under a year for ChatGPT to get to 100 million weekly active users, just an insane rate of growth already, looks basically flat compared to the growth that they've seen since then. There was just a massive inflection point jump, particularly when they released the reasoning models, where you can see over the last year or so, ChatGPT has just gone parabolic. It's also not just the users, they're also using it more. In fact, the message volume has actually increased at an even faster rate. But let's go back to what OpenAI thought was worth calling out as their most high-level insights. First of all, early on in ChatGPT's life, there had been something of a gender gap. Back in January 2024, among users with names that could be classified as either masculine or feminine, 37% had typically feminine names. Now, this is obviously not a perfect measure of gender, but I think for painting with broad brushstrokes, it works. By July of this year, that gender gap is completely gone. The number of users now that have those typically feminine names is at 52%. So if you're rounding off, you can basically assume, I think, that ChatGPT is being equally used by men and women. ChatGPT is also not just a tool for rich countries. In fact, it's growing faster in lower income countries. By May 2025, they wrote, ChatGPT adoption growth rates in the lowest income countries were over 4 times those in the highest income countries. To give a sense of just how different this is a chart showing how long it took different technologies to have 90% of their usage come from outside North America. The long blue line is the internet. From a classification of 1990 as year 1 on the internet, it took 23 full years for 90% of the usage to come from outside North America. For ChatGPT, it took less than 3 years, and honestly, by year 2, it was at like 80%. So the point is, this technology is for everyone around the world. Now, going back to usage patterns, OpenAI found that the most common usage was generally about getting everyday tasks done. They wrote, 3/4 of conversations focus on practical guidance, seeking information and writing, with writing being the most common work task, while coding and self-expression remain niche activities. Which again, you can tell this is the broad general population, not our super concentrated productivity hackers that we have over here on the show. Looking at it a different way, OpenAI suggested that AI use could be split into 3 broad categories: asking, doing, and expressing. They wrote that about half of the messages, 49%, are in that asking category. They suggest that this means that people, quote, value ChatGPT most as an advisor rather than only for task completion. Doing represented 40% of use and captured task-focused interactions like drafting text, planning, or programming, where the model generates functional outputs of some variety. Meanwhile, expressing was only 11% of use and captured everything else, largely involving things like personal reflection, exploration, and play. But what about the division between work and non-work tasks? The study found that around 30% of use was work-related, while 70% was non-work-related. Breaking down the different tasks by category, the study found that practical guidance was the most common type of conversation, representing 28.8% of usage. Seeking information, unsurprisingly, was up there as well, with 24.4% of usage. Next was writing at 23.9%, but from there it was a big step down. Multimedia was at 7.3%, and self-expression, technical help, and other and unknown each had a little over 5%. Part of what's interesting about the study is that you can also see how these patterns change over time. For example, in April of this year, there is a huge jump up in multimedia, which was, of course, right after the release of the GPT-4o image gen model and the Studio Giblification of everything meme, where just tons and tons of people were generating images who hadn't been doing that before. And interestingly, while that multimedia usage has leveled off, coming down from its peak of 12%, it's still up meaningfully from where it was. Before the Ghibli meme, it looks like multimedia usage was hovering a little under 4%. So to jump up to 7.3% means that some number of those Ghibli memers actually stuck around for other versions of that use case. Another interesting insight looking longitudinally is that the very obvious use case of writing is falling away over time. Now, my instinct is that this doesn't represent people finding less use for ChatGPT's writing abilities. I think this is much more about them learning over time other things that they can use ChatGPT for. For example, seeking information is up from 18% a year ago to 24.4% this summer. That growth lines up with the introduction of deep research and just better search tools in general. One observation that I saw a couple people flagging was the gap between these results and that Harvard study that found therapy and companionship as the number one use case. Justin Angel writes, "Weird that emotional support tasks like companionship and therapy are the top use case in the Harvard Business Review paper, but totally absent from this recent OpenAI report. Odd misclassification given that the HBR data examples are public. Feels like shenanigans. Why wouldn't OpenAI acknowledge emotional support use cases?" Now, I've always had a little bit of skepticism about that Harvard study that found therapy and companionship right at the top, but it is interesting to me and potentially notable that this study explicitly decided not to have a category for therapy and instead lump that in somewhere with practical guidance or self-expression. Now, those are the big top-line findings that OpenAI shared, but the folks on X dug much deeper into the actual paper and found a wealth of information. And one of the big interpretations was, boy, is this really good information if you are trying to figure out what to build. Greg Eisenberg, the host of the Startup Ideas podcast, posted the granular chart of each use case that was measured, arguing, each bar in this chart is a billion-dollar wedge if you build the right verticalized, trust-rich AI startup. So this breaks down those uses in a deeper way. For example, in practical guidance, they found that tutoring or teaching represented 10.2% of all ChatGPT usage. Greg wrote, "People want on-demand teachers more than almost anything else. A personal AI tutor that explains things your way, remembers your progress, and nudges you daily." How-to advice represented 8.5% of use, with Greg commenting, "This is consumer SaaS for micro niches. How to fix my resume, how to meal prep, how to set up my Shopify store. Every how-to is a wedge into a vertical AI agent." Lumping personal writing and editing together at 18%, Greg said this is demand for AI co-pilots inside every workflow tool, sales, legal, HR, PR. His big takeaway was, every bar is a behavior that people are already paying for elsewhere. Translate those behaviors into vertical AI agents and startups, the data doesn't lie. ARC Prize President Greg Kamrat had a similar take, sharing the same chart and saying, if you're looking for a startup idea, here you go, and also famously referencing the Craigslist unbundling chart, which showed how individual categories on Craigslist in many cases turned into their own highly valuable startups. But the counter-narrative was there as well. Jamie Forward summed up a lot of people's feelings when he responded, if you're looking for which startups not to build, here you go. The debate, of course, was around what ChatGPT is actually going to do. Michael Cove wrote, if people are using ChatGPT for those, going directly head-to-head with OpenAI is going to produce churn. People that aren't aware about ChatGPT eventually will find your app's feature there. People already using it aren't going to pay for your app and ChatGPT. I'd focus on what they're not using ChatGPT for. And that's precisely why it's a hard thing to find product market fit, especially in the consumer app market. It's outside the scope of this particular show, but this is one of the most interesting questions for startups right now, is trying to make a bet on which opportunities the big labs are going to decide are core functionality of these LLMs versus things that they're comfortable letting other people do. We also don't really know yet what behavior patterns are going to look like and whether people are going to be actually willing to pay for wrappers and what features are going to make wrappers that people are willing to pay for. Olivia Moore of Andreessen Horowitz had a different set of interesting observations. One she noted was that work-related usage is getting less and less over time for people on regular non-enterprise accounts. In June of last year, around 47% of usage was work-related, but now that's down to 27%. She also pointed out that in contrast to, for example, Claude, only 4.2% of conversations in this study are in some way code-related. Looking at a chart of daily messages sent per weekly active user, Swix also noted that there were some really significant inflections around the launch of the reasoning models and around the launch of deep research. So far, GPT-5 doesn't show a similar pop, but it's still very early and too hard to tell. Now, as I mentioned, this week we also got a new edition of Anthropic's Economic Index report. This study uses a similar methodology of taking anonymized Claude chats and categorizing them into different use cases. One key difference is that Anthropic analyzes all usage, including through the API, so this is not just the consumer chatbot use. In fact, some of their most interesting observations are around how API usage differs from Claude.ai use. This is now the third edition of this report and is published every 3 months this year, meaning that we're starting to get an interesting picture of not just how Claude is being used, but how usage has changed over time. There are a couple very interesting things here. First of all, it is absolutely the case that using Claude for coding is Anthropic's big key use case. Claude for coding, as they put it, continues to dominate their total sample at 36% of usage. They did also see, however, an uptick in educational tasks and scientific tasks. More interesting than that was that it feels like there is a shift towards more autonomous usage. They write directive conversations where users delegate complete tasks to Claude jumped from 27 to 39%. They gave an example in the context of coding, seeing a reduction in debugging down by 2.9 percentage points, where program creation in coding was up 4.5. They're also finding that the increase in automation tasks is happening even faster in the API. They wrote that 77% of business uses involve automation usage patterns, compared to about 50% for Claude AI users. Helping explain this, they write, one potential explanation for this is that AI is rapidly winning users' confidence and becoming increasingly responsible for completing sophisticated work. This could be the result of improved model capabilities. In December 2024, when we first collected data for the economic index, the latest version of Claude was Sonnet 3.6. As models get better at anticipating what users want and at producing high-quality work, users are likely more willing to trust the model's output at the first attempt. A couple other things that stood out as interesting to me in enterprise AI is that, one, at least so far, they are also seeing the same pattern of capability mattering more than cost right now. They write the most used tasks in our API data tend to cost more than the less frequent ones. Overall, we find evidence of weak price sensitivity. Model capabilities and the economic value of feasibly automating a given task appears to play a larger role in shaping businesses' usage patterns. This is something we've seen over and over, that we have not yet fully shifted into a mode where efficiency and cost are key driving considerations. As you've heard me say before, I think that is going to shift as the frontier of model capabilities moves farther and farther down the capability spectrum, i.e., as older models are still highly capable of lots of economically valuable tasks, and in general, as usage patterns start to concentrate around big autonomous token-consuming workloads, where companies are simply forced to consider costs in a way that they aren't right now, with some of their more initial use cases. Another interesting note they write, context-constrained sophisticated use. Our analysis suggests that curating the right context for models will be important for high-impact deployments of AI in complex domains. This implies that for some firms, costly data modernization and organizational investments to elicit contextual information may be a bottleneck for AI adoption. I have said it before, I will say it again now, and I will definitely keep hammering this point. I think that the big watchword of 2026 for enterprise AI is going to be context orchestration, context engineering. You're going to see companies finally have the cloud cover to actually invest in a bunch of data readiness things, rather than just spin up cool agent pilots. And when they do so, it is going to make a major difference in what those agents can do for them. Now, Fortune took and ran with this idea that businesses are leaning into automation. Indeed, they went all the way to suggest that the data confirms the narrative that entry-level workers are getting replaced by AI. Peter McCrory, the head of economics at Anthropic, told Fortune, businesses are figuring out how to build the embedded infrastructure to unlock the productivity effects, and there are likely some labor market implications as well. And yet still so much of this analysis is based on supposition. Harvard professor Christopher Stanton said, you can imagine that AI is doing a lot of what entry-level workers used to do, but you still need those people to get context. You might imagine that their wages are going to fall so that they can accumulate experience. Yes, you could imagine, or you might imagine, or we could actually see how this plays out, rather than trying to make policy and suppositions based on a professor's imagination. Now, Anthropic continues to be pretty vocal about the timelines that they're seeing for deeper and deeper automation. That is, of course, the motivating factor behind them even doing these reports. Recently, co-founder Jack Clark tweeted that the timeline we see for powerful AI systems as defined by Dario Amadei's Machines of Loving Grace essay is the end of 2026, early 2027. Jack continued, of course, many reasons this could be wrong, but so far many believe public trends point to this. So that is the latest insight on how people are using these LLMs. On the personal side, you see increased usage and a greater diversity of use cases. On the enterprise side, you see a push towards automation as capabilities enable it. If Anthropic keeps this up, we will be able to come back and check on some of this in 3 months. For now, though, that's going to do it for today's AI Daily Brief. Appreciate you listening or watching as always, and until next time, peace.